Welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how to make a delicious, super easy, last-minute dessert for any occasion, but especially the holidays because we're 5 days out from Christmas, about a week and a half out from New Year's. If you don't want to do anything difficult, but you want something that probably going to impress some people, I got you covered. I'm calling these holiday confetti bars because there's a little bit of everything in them and sounded kind of cool. So before we get into the recipe, please hit that subscribe button to help support the channel. Make sure you hit that bell if you want a notification every time a new video drops. Now, let's get into the ingredients. Okay, let's talk ingredients. So, I'm not gonna go over specific measurements. If you want the exact recipe, measurement for measurement, it's gonna be in the description box below. It's also gonna be available on my website, which I will leave the link for in the description as well. But we got graham crackers, we got sugar, we got butter. All that's gonna be going in for a graham cracker crust to kind of lay on the bottom there. On top of that, we're gonna go down with some chocolate chips, some butterscotch chips, and then on top of that, we're gonna go down with sweetened condensed milk, then some shredded coconut, and lastly, some almonds. You can kind of customize this a little bit. In terms of the chips, I'm a chocolate guy, not so much of a butterscotch guy, but I have them already from a different recipe, so I'm just gonna use them and use them up. You could do peppermint chips, you could do dark chocolate, white chocolate, whatever you want. You can customize it. And then in terms of the almonds, technically this recipe that I found on Instagram had pecans instead of almonds. I had these already for another recipe. Gonna use these up, not gonna go waste money for no reason, right? So that's pretty much it. Super easy, not necessarily stuff you might have in the house, but I got everything at Walmart for probably about 15, 20 bucks that I didn't already have to buy, and that's just because the almonds were about $10 just for the bag. So everything else was really cheap, so not too bad. But that's it. Let's get into cooking. All right, to get started here, preheat your oven to 350 degrees before you do anything else. Then you need to grab a 9 by 13 baking pan, plop that baby down, and then we're going to work on the graham cracker crust first. Now, I think my measurements must have just been off, but the other times I've used a 9 by 13 graham cracker crust, I've always done 2 packets of graham crackers, 1 stick of butter, mix it all together, and it works perfectly. This is a different brand of graham cracker than I usually use, so I don't know if that's why, but the 1 stick of butter was not nearly enough to actually make like a homogeneous crust. So I added some more, I'll explain that in a second. But take your sleeves of graham crackers, you definitely need 2 sleeves, smush them up as good as you can. If you have a food processor, this is probably the easiest way to do it. Just toss them all in there and process it until it's like basically crumbs, essentially. And then you can, at the same time, take your butter, pop it into the microwave. I went with 1.5 sticks total. I tried a stick first, did not yield enough. I also kind of exploded a little bit of the butter in the microwave. So I lost a little bit, but not nearly enough for it to justify it not being as good of a crust as it should have been. So I'd say do 1.5 sticks of butter to start. Truthfully, after I'm looking back and trying it now, the crust is still a little crumbly for my taste, so I think 2 sticks might even cut it, but I'll have to test it in the future. Truthfully, I don't think it would hurt you, and more butter, I mean, hey, not gonna taste bad, that's for sure. So in the description, I'm gonna put 2 sticks of butter. You know, you kind of do you. You could always start with 1.5 sticks and then go from there. But 2 packs of graham crackers, 2 sticks of butter, that's what I'm going with. Aside from the butter and the graham crackers, I also add 1/3 cup of sugar just because that's always been how I've made my graham cracker crusts. It's not necessary, especially if your graham crackers are sweeter than your typical graham crackers, but I just did it. So 1/3 cup of sugar with the graham crackers and butter. Then, following the melting butter, dump it on into your graham crackers. Use a fork to just kind of mix it up together. You can do this in a separate bowl if you want, but I figure this is a last minute recipe. You're probably not trying to get a whole bunch of kitchen dishes and stuff dirty, so do it all in your baking pan. It'll save you a dish. Just kind of stir everything together with a fork. Once everything's well combined, there really shouldn't be any fine powder left. The butter should do enough of a job that it's all kind of mushy enough to flatten out and have it stick together. So make sure you press down your graham cracker crust, get all the corners well. You do want them to kind of come up the sides just a little bit because we want our fillings to stay within the crust and not overflow on top. And then after that's done, we can move on to our chocolate chips. So this is, again, very customizable. I already had butterscotch chips. I love chocolate chips. So I did probably a 2-to-1 ratio of chocolate chips to butterscotch chips. In total, you need about 2 cups of chips total. So I would say probably I did 1.5 cups of chocolate and 1/2 cup of butterscotch. I didn't measure them. It's completely eyeball. And you can do more than 2 cups. You can do less than 2 cups. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough of a coverage of my crust that there wasn't going to be bare spots, basically. So once I put all of my chips in, next is the condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk to be exact. I'm wondering if a second can on top of the coconut might make things a little bit more gooey, because the coconut was very, very flaky when it was all said and done, but I only used the 1 can of condensed milk here, and I just kind of evenly poured it over all the chocolate chips. And it doesn't need to be perfect because when it's all heating up in the oven, it's going to kind of melt together and become pretty homogeneous. So it doesn't need to be perfect by any means. After the condensed milk is down, next is the coconut. If you don't like coconut, skip it. I mean, truthfully, it's a little too flaky for my taste in this specific setting. And again, I think that's just related to not enough liquid stuff. Another can of condensed milk on top is something I'll try next time, and I think it might help. But it's still delicious regardless. It's just very crumbly, which might not bother you. Doesn't really bother me because it's all going the same place. But for the aesthetic, we kind of want it to look a little bit better. But regardless, lay down a pretty hefty layer of coconut on top of your condensed milk. And then finally, we're going to take our almonds, or nuts of your choice. And if you don't like nuts, don't add them, but I wanted some. I went with almonds because, like I said, I already had it in the house. And I went back and forth about toasting my almonds before putting them on top of this, because they taste better when they're toasted. But I was worried that toasting them before adding them and then baking them while they're directly on top would basically double toast them. And then they'd probably just taste burnt. So I didn't toast them first, and I'm happy to say in the final product, they came out perfectly. They are nice and toasty, but not overdone. So in order to get them ready, all I did is pop them into a Ziploc bag, take my rolling pin, and just mash the living hell out of these guys. You can leave them whole if you want, but I don't think that's going to make for a very satisfying bite because I think you're going to get a lot more crunch than I would typically want in something like this. So I crumbled mine into pieces. You could also buy your almonds already sliced or crushed or whatever, and I think that would be just fine as well. Definitely not going to negatively affect the end product at all. So I forgot to mention, I also added some dried cranberries into mine because once again, they were in the house. I've had them since Thanksgiving, and I figured I might as well use them up before they go bad. So I've added them with my chocolate chip layer. Again, just kind of eyeballing everything. There's really no exact measurements here. You can kind of add what you like and take out what you don't. So once you're all said and done and you're satisfied with your layering, pop this into the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Middle shelf, 350. Start with 25 minutes.
A few moments later.
Oh my God, can you smell that? Well, you can't, but I can, and it smells pretty good. Unfortunately, it's gotta cool, so I'll meet you back here in half an hour. I really want to eat it now. It smells so good. It's only been 3 minutes. I'll see you back here in a little while. That's a good sign. All right, well, they're supposed to be bars, I didn't really let it cool enough yet, I guess, but I'm not waiting anymore. So mine's going to be a bit of a mess, but we can throw the rest in the fridge and make them cool off into bars. So I will just eat this one with a fork. At least we can find out if it tastes good. All right, yeah, a little bit of a mess, but let's go at it. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Wow. I mean, it's got all the textures. It's got so many different layers of flavor. My God. Wow. Yeah, you guys, even if you're not in a last minute pinch, just make these and thank me later. The real question is, does it pass the coffee test? Which I've never talked about on this show before, but every time I eat dessert, I need coffee. It's just hand in hand. If I have something sweet, I want a cup of coffee. That's just how my brain works. So, does it pass the coffee test? Oh yeah, it passes the test. This is, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It might need a little tweaking. I think it's just because it's still so warm, just to get it to hold itself together better. So I'm gonna throw this in the fridge after we're done filming, and if for some reason it does not hold itself together a little better, I'll make a follow-up comment or something in the description below. But that is pretty much all I've got for today. Thank you for joining me, as always. Let me know if you guys make these in the comments. I really appreciate hearing from you guys, and I'm loving the community that we're building here. So thank you again for joining me. I might get one more video up before Christmas in a couple of days, or 5 days, but I'm gonna try to get one more video up after this one. If by some chance I can't, have a happy and safe holiday if you're celebrating. If you're not, be happy and safe anyway. And if I don't see you guys again before the holiday, I'll see you next week, and thanks again. Peace.